and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today I'm talking with Alex Chinnici, the DP of films such as Bandit. He did one of the VHS 99 anthology films. It's like that film is a bunch of smaller films. He also did the extreme fan favorite Uncharted short film with Nathan Fillion, if you saw that. And we talk about all of those things. This podcast is, we do all the greats, we talk about, growing up very similarly, the way that we both, filmed as kids and stuff, which I think, most people do at this point, or have at this point. That's how they kind of got into it when you're our age, 30s or so. We talk about film versus digital. In this conversation, we talk a lot about how to get that specific look, which is something that I would actually like to talk to more DPs about, because there's certainly an artistry with all cinematography, but I think it's, I've name dropped Steve Yedlin 400,000 times on this podcast, and I will get him on this podcast to talk about it. But I think the thing that I've taken from what he said, and I could be wrong, that's why I'd like to have him on the podcast, is you can do anything you want, and it's knowing what you want and how to achieve that. That's the hard part. It's very easy to say, oh, film makes everything look magically beautiful, and it does, but to control that beast is another matter. So we talk about that. We talk about the advantages of digital, of which there are many, and more great things. This is a really fun pod. Alex actually called in from work. He is off shooting a film right now. So he called. It was like 11 p.m. I think we talked until 1 a.m. his time, something like that. So very appreciative for Alex's time, and I know you're going to like this one. So I'm going to let you get to liking it. Here's my conversation with Alex Chinnici. When you got into filmmaking, was it film that got you into it, or was there another creative thing? We've had plenty of DPs that were like architects first, or like, did you fall into it, or were you always a film guy?
I guess I was always a film guy. I'm really lucky. When I was like 11 years old, I just grabbed my dad's video camera that, kind of would just holidays, kind of capture us or whatever, and just took that and just started making movies with my friends. Really silly stuff at first. And that really, and I say I'm lucky because it basically turned into a group of us that started actually getting very serious about making short films as early as like middle school and then into high school. And we were making I'm pretty proud of some of those, even though they're so rudimentary. But I look back now and I'm like, damn, we were doing that when we were like 15. This is crazy. So I was really lucky that I filmed like a group of kids, put our money together, got a DVX 100, and, really kind of upped the game. Went to school of visual arts together as a group in New York City. And then I found cinematography, and kind of went from there. So yeah, more specifically to your question, I'd say film, because I watched a lot of movies growing up, loved them. And then, not to sound too typical, but like Apocalypse Now was the one that kind of, I think, messed me up in a good and bad
Honestly,
way, because it was
not a lot of people have said that.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have expected it, because what was interesting is my dad showed me, my mom went on vacation and he showed me Alien, Aliens, Terminator, Terminator 2, Predator, and Predator 2 over a weekend. And it blew my mind, and I loved it. Yeah, right. She was so mad. I was 6 years old. She was so mad at him. And then a while later, and he saw I liked all that stuff. And then a while later, I think when I was 8, he showed me Apocalypse Now. And all I remember, the only I'm not going to sit here and be I saw it and was I want to do cinematography. It's not what happened. Obviously, I was 8. But I do distinctly remember being right, there's action, there's comedy, there's these genres or whatever. And then I watched Apocalypse Now and I didn't understand it. And I was like, what the fuck was that? I want more. It was spicy. I want more of it, I was give me more. And that kind of just started the whole thing. That wasn't just my siblings and I, we watched a lot of like animation, right? Which I love animation, but a lot of like Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. And Apocalypse Now was the one where I was like, what? So I think that, and then I don't know why I grabbed my dad's camera and started running around with it. I think we were just like, we were fucking around. We were being really silly. Like I looked back at it a little while ago and it was like this straight up toilet humor,
Right.
like that early stuff. Yeah.
When I was a kid, it was the same thing, grab the handy cam, whatever. But at the time, me and my friends, I grew up in a tiny fucking town. And so our two biggest influences are like action films and Jackass. So we were just doing stunts and trying to replicate the Matrix. A friend of ours had like an airsoft gun store.
Dude,
and so
literally.
we did a lot of that.
We did something I'm so proud of is we were like blown away by doing like, I think a lot of people do like the reverse shot, so we were like literally like reversing the thing. So we did a bullet time handheld, just literally going around. But what we did was that we built a rig that was like 2x4s and hinges. So basically what happened, it was like in the trench coat. And then we started lying down. So it was like this and then into your back.
Oh, wow.
So you're parallel. And then basically as you stood up, the hinges sort of like brought it back. So it like folded back onto the coat. And like our friends stood up and then we like wrapped around and then we reversed that. And everyone in school, because we showed it, in school or whatever, because it was for like an English project and it was our way of not having to do an essay.
Same, dude.
So, like,
I did the same thing for Spanish.
Project. Yeah. It was like, which those teachers at the time, I look back, I'm like, what a terrible, like, don't say yes to that. Like make the kid write an essay. But anyway, so everyone's freaking out in school. And I had a really good moment too, where a teacher, he was crying, laughing, because we showed it to him before he would show it to everyone in class, because he started to be like, you guys are trouble. And he was crying, laughing, and he said to us, there's no way through these laughing tears I can ever show this to anyone. And he like made us re-edit it because it was so naughty, really, which is amazing. So yeah, that stuff was so much fun. And then eventually turned into being like, no, let's actually try to make these good and tell stories. And it went from there. So when people say to me, like, how long have you been DPing for? Like the script supervisor yesterday asked me how long you've been DPing for. And I was like, I was running around with the camera when I was a kid. I don't know. It feels like forever. Professionally, 10 years. But like what, to me, it feels like I've been on this journey for as long as I can remember,
Yeah. There's a few things I kind of want to touch in there because first of all, you and I have had almost the exact same kind of starting point, so that's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
But the thing about editing, because this podcast half's educational, half entertaining, and I think people that are listening to it who are maybe younger and don't remember those early DV days, can you explain how difficult it was to get the footage onto a computer to edit?
Yeah, sure. So I was making stuff, kind of late 90s, really early 2000s. And so, we were shooting to tape, and there were different ways. We either would have a deck that we would pop the tape in, and we'd connect it to the computer and we'd like ingest it via iMovie or Final Cut. 7 was the one, but I think I started around like 4, 5, 6, something like that.
And you had to have FireWire. I did not because I was on a PC. So that was a whole nother adventure.
My dad, so I will say this, my dad's a photographer, which I know you can think of, DP thing, but he was a real like Mac tech guy. So I was very lucky that he's still like this too. He's just very in the know, which is so cool. I'm like, I can talk lenses with my dad. It's crazy. Very, very lucky in that way. But we had FireWire 400 and eventually upgraded to 800 and all that. You could hook the camera directly in, depending if you had the right camera. And then there was, doing the tape to tape editing and all that. And I think all that stuff, I will say, quick side note for anybody who's doing it now though, is this goes to DPs in general and a lot of people in film. I think knowing how to edit is extremely important because 100%. It is such a massive part of the filmmaking process. I'm saying you have to be an editor. I actually find it wildly tedious. I had to stop at some point. I was like, I don't like this at all. But to understand it is unbelievably important, and I think an incredible foundation. I would argue even maybe more important than writing. Writing is obviously very, very important as well, but a lot of the time there's so many roles that aren't involved in it. And storytelling, you sit around a campfire and tell a story or whatever. But to really understand, like sit there, shoot something, have that theoretical idea of how it will work, and then sit there at the computer and try to make it work. And then you go like, oh my God, like I have no idea. I think you have a major epiphany in that. And I would encourage a lot of people to do that more than most things.
Yeah, no, we've said that a million times on this podcast, because I mean, the thing with being a DP, especially today, I feel is like there are specific ways in which one can do their job that makes everyone else's job easier. So for instance, knowing how to edit means that you won't be giving your post-production people bullshit that they'll never use, or you can tell your director, if maybe they're not as experienced as you, like, trust me, we don't need that, like, you're not going to use that, like, or that kind of conversation, at least. I mean, not that you would necessarily tell your director, like,
no
off, but
the reality is that, like, I'm on a movie right now, and this is old. It's you have to constantly be juggling these compromises and this time estimates and how long you're doing things, and it's just this constant dance. And so I get asked it constantly. Did we get that? Do we need this piece? Well, how do we cut from this to this? And if you don't, it's interesting because on set it's shot listing, and on set it's entirely theoretical. And I've watched stuff I've shot that I felt very confident about, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, that didn't work, or oh shit, that worked a lot better than I thought it was going to. And the more you do that, the more that you understand, because you're doing it in real life. You're doing it, one step at a time. And sometimes it's hours apart or days or weeks apart, depending on what you're doing. And you have to have a brain for understanding each piece. It's these little puzzle pieces that you're just plucking out of the air and putting together. And so, it's a major part of, I'll sit there sometimes going, oh shit, the time, and trying to nudge if we're spending more time on one thing versus another, which one could say, oh, a DP should just be worried about, like, the look. But a big part of your job is that, making the day happen, and those decisions are really important.
Yeah. I mean, a modern DP these days, the look stuff is almost page one, day one. And then the professional stuff is like logistics and management.
1,000%. Management is the perfect word. I couldn't agree more. And I think that you have to like that part, because operating, not operating, lighting, I'm still because composition, that can start to involve a lot of different things. And some directors are more involved, and, but lighting still feels like an area. Of course, they could give notes on, it's too dark, that's too, whatever. But generally speaking, it's still a little bit of, magic, which I don't
totally
like that word, but people see it as that, so they kind of leave you alone a little bit. And that's still the area that I find the most fun, and I think you have the most influence on, really.
That's the reward for doing all the management.
Exactly. Yeah, no, totally. I had a little fancy camera test last Friday before we started, because we just started on Monday. And it was such a fun day. And I said to the crew at some point, I was like, it was just for like 8-10 hours. We were just literally just playing with light and stuff like that. And I was like, this is the best. I was like, this is great. Like, no one's coming over being like, hey, what do you guys, like, we were just messing around. It was great. It's the most fun part to me, because it's also like, it is also really theoretical, like a camera, you can tangible lenses, focal lengths, all type of stuff. Light is so much more complicated. And so when you get it, and there's so many little like surprises and things that come up that I still like fall in love with, where you're like, oh, that's what I intended, but here's this other thing reflected off of this and this thing and this person's skin tone and what they're wearing, and like, oh shit. And I love that.
Yeah, there's not, that actually when people talk about like the film versus digital debate, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people confuse film with just looking professional. Because if you recall in the DV days, we wanted it to look like film because DV looked like shit. Now digital looks great. It doesn't need to look like film, like photochemical film. So I think I always try to tell people, like, do you want it to look like film or do you want it to look professional? Because that's a completely different argument. But I think a lot of people. Oh no, I've lost it all. I went too deep.
You're good. You're good.
I do this shit all the time.
You're good. The film digital thing will do that.
Film letting you have happy accidents. I think lighting is still in that category where you can still set something up and go, that's not quite right. And then you turn a couple things off and you're like, wow, there you go. That's what we wanted versus how exact digital is. You look at the monitor, that's what you're getting. There's no surprises here. Yeah.
And I actually totally agree with that. And I think that some pretty funky lenses can start to dip a little bit into that, but still it's a hard piece of, and I'm a total major lens nerd, but I'm always testing and always finding new stuff, and it's great. But yeah, I will say though, with, I think it's so great that we're now at a time where, depending on your resources and such, you can there's so much to choose from different sensor sizes to camera bodies that do different things logistically to all the LUT stuff, lenses. That is incredible what's happened with lenses. And film is viable for a lot of people. I have lots of friends at different rental houses and stuff. And they keep saying, oh my God, so many people are using film nowadays. So that's all great. I actually love digital though, because I like getting really precise with my image, and I like dialing in. I find with cinematography, there's just constant layers, like everything from, I could list off 100 things from, frame rate, shutter, Kelvin, tint, filtration, lens, what stop I'm at the lens with, I could go on and on, LUT stuff, everything, lighting, what my fill is, what my ratio is, I could go crazy with it. And so what I love about digital actually is that, and film's great, obviously I learned on it. That's where film school, I shot a ton of it and I love it. It's still great, but I love in digital how specific I can get. And I think a lot of people over romanticize film, and there's still, I'll put it this way, I'm almost like I did that in film school and I had that time where I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And I feel a lot of people are having that moment, and that's very special. But given what's happened with development and what you can do and stocks and the actual treatment to film that has kind of gone heavily by the wayside and people doing it heavily in the DI anyway, I feel often that like the Kodak, sorry, but the Kodak 5219 look that everybody's doing, it's a look and that's great. But I feel that with the certain tools that I put in place, I can kind of take it further. I can make it more unique. It's kind of the Steve Yedlin like authorship thing that I adhere to. I think I can get further with it. I can get more specific. I can make it more mine. I can make it more what's right for the project, and so I keep falling back into it because I keep going, well, I have more control, and that's the whole point. For me, at least. For other people, they want to have that surprise. I think, a bit more of a professional in that way, where I want to know what I'm getting, make sure everybody agrees with what I'm getting, and just constantly make it better rather than be surprised by it. That's exciting, but it feels a little, what's the right word?
Hands off the wheel.
Yeah, and that's appropriate sometimes, but it feels a little, I was going to say youthful. That's not the right word I'm looking for. Elementary, in a way that's what you're looking for. For me, I'm working with Paramount right now in this film, and it's like that's not the job, which again, people would disagree, but that's kind of where I come from it at, same with the DIT and CDLs and all that stuff. I'm like, I'm not just getting what's out of the box. I'm taking it on a long journey to make it specific and unique. Because that's what I want as an audience member. I want to look at something that I'm like, that's very special, and I want to sit down and I want to watch that, not what I've seen a million times.
Ari Mini with Cooks.
Yeah, it's great. And it's great. And it's great. And if you're young, then like, who gives, like, fucking do this, whatever, who cares? Like, just go do that. Just do. But now I'm grateful and I'm fortunate that I'm at a place now where, spending a lot of money. I've got an important job that I have to make sure that these things are happening. And I also just think it's more exciting because I'm adding those layers and I'm sending it in directions and making it something that people, are like, I don't know why, but this makes me feel this way. And I think digital actually lets me do that more because I'm doing all sorts of halation and film grain shit later, and I'm adding all these layers, even in color, that I just have more control over. How much of it do I want? You know?
Well,
I like that.
I've name dropped Steve Yedlin a million times on this podcast. Hopefully, the powers that be will allow him we can talk about it. But after going through all of his, minor dissertations, I'm like, I kind of felt to the same thing where I was like, all right, it doesn't matter what camera. Yeah, maybe you don't want to go to like 2008, but like modern cameras, any modern camera, you can art direct to make look the way you're intending. And to your
that's
point
the point. That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah. To your point about being youthful, I think going back to what we were talking about like how difficult it was to get DV onto your computer. I think because it was that difficult, it took a lot of motivation. And so you either really wanted to do it or you didn't. And I think now it actually has become so easy that people can get, and generally things are easy today. Not easy for everyone. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but in this specific thing.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So it can be easy to get frustrated quickly because you're like, there's one button that's keeping me from doing this and I can't find it. Fuck it.
Yeah.
So when you say like, go do, just like go film, it's like, you almost have to do more work because it's so easy because there was way more time dedicated to other stuff. Right. And now you can literally just like, as you said, pick up your cell phone and shoot. So you're like, oh, fuck, now I have to spend all my time writing.
Yeah. Right. Which I do not envy. I don't write and I'm good on that one. That seems rough. But no, I agree with you. And I think that this kind of there's a bit of a no excuse thing. However, I trust me to anybody listening. I know how hard it is. I've done the lowest, smallest, and the most difficult. I could tell some crazy stories that I shouldn't tell, but there's it's real hard out there. But the point is, if you want to, you can. You really can.
Were you a big, because this kind of flows into something we've talked about a lot, is like, were you a big special features person growing up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I still, to this day, like any of the Disney gallery stuff that's coming out now, or even the Batman on HBO Max, I was like 2 minutes? Like, come on, guys. Like, I want more than this. But I'll sit there, because my big thing is I love pausing, and I do this all the time and just sort of study, they have just that one, they're always like 1 or 2 seconds. And I'm like, come on, like, this is what we want. And I'll sit there and look at kind of what's happening. And I love that education. But yeah, I mean, so my wife's a director and she is, we're both just major nerds and film nerds and love all this stuff. And so we watched, right before Matrix 4 just came out, we rewatched Matrix Revisited, I think is what it's called. Do you know about this?
The documentary?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is that what it's called? Matrix?
Well, so I did the same thing, but I didn't. My girlfriend is not in the film industry at all, but we watched 1, 2, 3 and Animatrix.
Right. But there was also there's the doc that came out after the first movie, and I bring that up because
I must have watched it, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was great because it was an actual like DVD that they sold, not as like a box, that it was a separate.
I see.
Maybe I wore the shit out of that thing. Like, it had like the fucking rings on it, because it was the BTA. It's a feature long. We rewatched it. It's on iTunes. That's where we found it, and it was great. It's a 90-minute doc, just about the making of the Matrix. Which, again, I saw that when I was 12, and that movie shook me. That movie fucked me up. Like, I walked in as one. It's when people talk about Star Wars 1977, I'm like, that must have been what that was like, because 100%. that movie completely blew my mind. And I've seen it in theaters a bunch since, when they did the Dolby Vision and all that,
Yep.
and the
Went to
IMAX
that.
one and everything. And oh man, when that helicopter smashes into the glass by the end of that moment, he, you know, with the rope and everything like that, I could just feel the audience like flipping out. You know, you just feel that energy in the room. And it's just like, man, they don't make action scenes like this anymore. Like, this is, I can feel it in the room that the people are salivating and hungry for a scene like this, you know, that they're just, they're reacting in a different way. Their eyes aren't glazed over like some of the shit that they watch these days. But,
like The Matrix 4.
yeah. Rest in peace.
I liked it for what it was.
Yeah, that was rough.
I actually wanted to kind of dive into some of your work, because they emailed me to have you on about Bandit, which we can get into a little bit, which I can't say.
Sure,
seen,
whatever.
But
yeah, whatever you want to talk about.
But I guess we'll start, because we're kind of still talking about cameras. Is VHS 99 has a very specific look. And so the question is, after we've just had all this conversation, did you shoot that on DV, or was that digital and then transferred?
Sure. Yeah. So no, that's a fun one to talk about. So I just did that back in the spring. It wasn't long ago. And I only did one piece. It was Johannes Roberts' Suicide Bed is what it's called. And for anybody listening, it's sorority girls who they eventually end up in like a coffin and all that. So that was the only piece that I did on that one. And this is just different DP and director per short. And that was interesting because I interviewed for it, and I said to them, I was like, I only want to do this if you guys want to go all the way, because I don't see the point otherwise, you know? Like, I read the script and I was like, because it's basically supposed to be a bunch of sorority girls in 1998, like walking around with a camcorder and following each other. And so what I ended up doing was I looked into a little bit more. I was looking with mini DV or DV, and I was like, oh man, getting picture to Village, downloading, you know, getting this footage in and everything like that. I was like, what a pain in the ass. So what I decided to do, which I think was a good compromise, because I actually read the reviews, and thankfully almost like every review was like, Suicide Bid was the most like committed and everything, which I took as a really big compliment, because it was very important to me. Because I think in found footage, the scariest stuff is the stuff that makes your brain kind of go like, is this real? Like, you know, like starts to trick you. Because I don't really like found footage. And I was a bit pretentious towards it when it came my way. And I'm so glad I was wrong though, because when I did it, I loved it. And I thought it was so much harder than I ever thought, because it was like, I had to unlearn everything I've ever learned. I had to set my ego at the doors. Like, all the tricks and things I fell onto were just like done, out the window. And that was really cool. And it was cool too, because in 1999, I was running around with my friends making movies with little camcorders, and it was like a full circle back around, which was so neat. But real quick, camera wise, what I did was that Sony still makes little handy cams, right? Sure. And so what was important to me was that I was like, okay, this is going to work, because I just need the weight and the movement, the thing on your wrist. I need the small sensor and whatever else is going on there in terms of the little horrible, tiny little zoom lens that's this big. But I've got SD cards. So boom, everybody's happy. You know, Post House is happy too, because they have an actual physical thing. And I've got a little mini HDMI that I can go out to a Teradek, and I can send to Village. And so my my camera package was like this big, little flip out screen, and they put a little fanny pack on me, and we ran the cable, and the HDMI held up, which I was shocked. I thought I was going to be changing that thing out like every 2 hours. Yeah, but it held up. The AC did a great job, and I had my little Teradek thing, you know, sticking out, and we, you know, had little SD cards. And then we transferred it to VHS and back again afterwards to really give it the final zhuzh, you know. But it had the depth of field. It had all just kind of deteriorating, and it had that weight and that feel. And so it was really fun. It would have been fun to go, you know, even further with it. But when I really looked at it, again, that's kind of how I am. I was just like, all right, I think I can weigh both. I don't need to overly romanticize this and make everyone's lives incredibly difficult. I can kind of find a good middle ground here. And I think I did. I think it, it looks like a camera of that era. I had a 4K mode and I said, fuck that, and went to, 1080 mode, like
Sure.
any of that kind of stuff to sort of just like bring it down,
Well, now I have three questions. But in that sense, like in any shoot, the battle of logistics and creativity is always going to come up. If you're shooting a documentary, it's almost all logistics. If you're shooting and so that, I think that is something that, as you were saying, only comes by doing a lot. You can't really teach anyone where that balance is. It's all from experience.
Totally. Yeah, which is again why you just have to do it, because then you figure it out and maybe you get slapped occasionally or whatever, and you get burned, or it's a reality. But it is the fun of it. It's sort of, you have to like that part of it if you want to be in filmmaking. It's not in a vacuum. You have to enjoy. Honestly, the simplest way I can put it is it's just problem solving. That's really what it is at the end of the day. And so, how do you handle that? Well, how do you react?
Something that Adam Savage said that I really like is, like, when you come up against stuff like that, usually the problems you're trying to solve hack off a bunch of branches off your decision tree, and it makes things a lot easier, actually. Instead of freaking out about what you can't do, you realize what options you have and go with the best.
Totally. And I said that just even in prep a couple weeks ago on this, there were some, just as usual, oh, we can only do this, we can only do that. And I said to a few people a few times, I was like, kind of makes it simpler in a way, because now I'm almost just, I don't want to walk out into a field and have nothing. And I'm just like, I think visionary directors, writers can do that. For me, I'm a type where, I want to walk into a space and understand. And I did a lot of little doc shooting in my 20s. And what that taught me is a good note for younger people too, is what's great about doc stuff is that you end up at a location, interview or B-roll or whatever, and you have to immediately decide like where you should go and where you should shoot, because we only have this person for this amount of time. So with the skill that it gave me is I can walk into a room and extremely fast I can tell you the best looking part of that space.
Yep.
May not be the most appropriate, right? Like it may that doesn't really work because of X, Y, and Z, but I can tell you like the prettiest, like what is going to be the best looking and why. And that's a really good skill to have. So if I'm in a situation where I'm sort of confined, it does make it easier. It may not be better, but it certainly makes it easier, because it's just like, okay, got it. I only have this. I only can do that. And like, you just piece it together, which I value. I think I have a very good skill at that, because I've worked on, my budgets have gotten bigger and everything like that. But I started for a long time on really low budget stuff. And now I just have a skill of like, I can do a lot with very, very little, which I also think is a good thing that people should learn how to do. Because no matter what, you still find yourself in that position sometimes where, oh, this broke and and everybody's freaking out. It's like, hold on, that and that, this, go, like simple.
Totally. In what ways did using the little handy cam inform what you were allowed to do in terms of lighting and, using modern tricks and stuff like that? Because I assume if you lit the thing beautifully and then shot with that camera, that could even look fake.
Yeah,
I think modern sensors tend to be kind of forgiving.
Totally. Absolutely. The dynamic range was a lot less. So everything's kind of getting really dumbed down and softened. And I had to, knock down the highlights, raise the shadows, with everything just had to, come in there, which was a fun challenge. And it was just sort of just tweaking, getting there. I actually, with VHS 99, that was something I decided to do that people may like it, may not. But I actually did decide to make the lighting feel horror. So that was sort of a little, I decided, I was like, okay, the camera and the conceit and everything feels real, but then when we're in a graveyard at part of it and everything like that, then I kind of pushed it and went like spooky horror graveyard lighting, was because I was like, okay, by now we're 10 minutes into this and we get it. We're in this. And then eventually a creature shows up and everything like that. And I'm like, I have to justify that and sort of, pull you into that. And it's up to people to decide if, they like that or not. But but it was starting a little more realistic and then going that way. But what was fun too, though, was, I mean, well, the challenge was I had to light almost 270, not fully 360, but that's always really hard. And, make that work. So we're looking different, I'm going from here to over there and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, we had one moment where I was like, shit, we're going to turn around. They actually cut it out, but I was like, we're going to turn around and we're going to completely see all this lighting. And this girl is drunk and she almost like falls. So the director and I realized that I was like, oh, I can almost like trip with her and basically like look down and then come back up. And so I did that to basically avoid seeing the lighting, which you could never do in any cinematic world. But I could justify basically like, we're walking over this thing. And so sort of like look down almost at my feet and then come back up when I would, because if I just did this, I would have saw it. But I did like,
well, because you're also a character in that sense, right?
Yeah. No, I am playing. It's a bunch of sorority girls, so the actresses were really great. They're really funny, and it was really cool. I've worked so closely with them in a way that I haven't before, which is really fun. But they named me and everything. I was Lindsay, the other sorority girls. So because they're looking at the camera and all that, and that's what we realized in rehearsals, because they were gonna. I was sort of like, well, maybe do they operate and they can pass off to me. But then Johannes very understandably was like,
Lindsay's
I don't want them to be distracted. Right. She was. But I don't want them to be distracted by the camera. Totally makes sense. And then literally we did one take during a rehearsal. And then right as we were doing the second one, we almost at the same time said it. We were like, you should just be an off camera person. You just never see. And she's just the girl who, maybe she's taking the video class and she wants to, that's how we justified it. And it was fun in that way, because then I could do little interactions with them and they could make faces and all that, So it was good.
Yeah. I had a couple friends. You ever hear of 5-second films?
Yes. Yeah.
So those are a handful of buddies of mine. And they made this movie called Dude Bro Party Massacre 3.
Great.
There's not a
there's not a 1 and 2, right?
No,
yes.
no.
I love it. Awesome.
And so it's a fantastic, I think you can get it on like Shudder or one of those like horror streamers.
Cool.
But
cool.
But they shot Red Dragon and then ran it through a VCR and then beat the VCR with baseball bats as they were recording out. It's a great little film. And then they put the conceit of that movie is that it was only shown once on a local station. So the tape you're watching is some teenage boy's recording of it. So there's the tail end and the opening end of commercials.
Awesome.
And as the movie progresses, those commercials get more and more demented,
Love it. I love that kind of stuff. That's so much fun. Yeah. I wish I did a little bit more of that when I was younger too, kind of more that horror absurdist stuff. Because now that I've started dipping my toes into that world, it's so much fun. Yeah. I love it. It's like a lot less rules,
Totally.
More expressionism, which I prefer over realism, kind of just theatrical and just absurd. I love it. I think it's great.
Well, that's kind of a nice dovetail into the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I didn't know you shot this until I checked your IMDb real fast, but you shot the Uncharted short.
Yeah. That was really fun. And actually, Bandit is the same director.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
As that. Yeah, that's how we connected.
So, especially now that we've had a Uncharted film that has come out since then, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily the better of the two. I just kind of wanted to talk to you about, like, now, when was that? Like 4 years ago?
Something like that. Yeah. Around there. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, like, tell me how, because I know you guys had a kind of a shortened schedule on that. You only had like 2 weeks to shoot the thing, and it seems very simple.
I think we shot 3 or 4 days. It was crazy short. It was crazy short. Yeah.
So that's
3 or
kind
4.
of what
I think it was 3 days, and our 4th day was kind of a half day. Like it was, we had to go really far out somewhere, drive really far, shoot just for a little bit, and then come back. So it was really like 3.5 days. Yeah. Yeah. Really compressed.
Because that short is like, I think every film student watched that and went, "Oh fuck, I can do that." And then you see any of the behind the scenes footage, and you're like, "Oh no, there's way more going on than just a bunch of guys hanging out in a fancy house."
Yeah, and we spent. I mean, it was there was solid. I mean, I actually think for what we did, the budget is crazy low, but it was, you know, it was more than what students or people in their early 20s can spend, off their own dime. Totally. It's but still incredibly ambitious. Alan pulled a lot of favors too. It's a cool story. He's told it before, but he was making a movie in Canada and it fell through super last minute, some sketchy producer stuff. Which is just, it was really kind of devastating. So he basically pivoted because he's a really smart guy and he's a real hustler. He's turned into a really good friend of mine. And from Uncharted to Bandit, I watched him in both situations, like, persevere. And he's a great example of, like, especially as a director, like, never give up, never take no for an answer, go. So impressive in that way of just, like, picking up and doing it. But so yeah, he had a connection to Nathan and made it happen. And then his DP, who had done stuff in Canada with, got a directing gig and wanted to direct and went off. And so 2 weeks before, called me up. We had a mutual friend and was like, I just lost not only my DP, but all my equipment because he had everything. And he's like, so I'm fucked. But everyone speaks highly of you, whatever. I hear you're, blah, 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 whatever. Let's, you want to do this with me. It's a video game thing, but I can't tell you what it is. But Nathan Fillion's in it. And I'm a video game nerd. So literally on the phone in that moment, I was like, oh, so you're doing Uncharted? And he's like, how'd you know? And I was like, that's Nathan Fillion. Like,
he's the only one. He's Nathan Drake.
Yeah, I was like, that's got to be it. And he was like, yeah, shit. He was like, all right, so we're going to get along. And so, yeah, no time. We prepped it. I mean, it was less than 2 weeks. Lots and lots of favors, some miracles pulled. And I mean, we had a blast. It was like, and it's funny. It's still, people love it. People talk about it constantly. It was really, really cool to do, kind of an action thing. I don't mean to be negative, but I'd be lying if I didn't say there's so much more I wanted to do with it.
Oh, sure.
So much more, but still it's cool. Yeah. It's just, a lot of people I appreciate the positivity, and the love for it. And it's funny when the new movie came out, still people on Twitter and everything, no matter what he finds it and he shows me, he sends me stuff and he's just like, people are always like championing it in the way where they're like, fuck this rules, and it's like, that's kind of awesome. Because it was, for all intents and purposes, it was pretty scrappy actually,
Well, first of all, I think that speaks to the importance of casting, because you had the perfect Sully in Stephen Lang, and you had the perfect, what everyone wanted Nathan Drake to be and shit like that. And you see that in, that's why Fincher always gets away with, being like, oh, he's the best in the world. And it's like, he's actually pretty, I don't want to say simple, but pared down. It's his casting is always perfect.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can tell you as a DP right now that now that I'm very lucky that I've filmed some really kind of wonderful faces, ones that people are excited about and incredibly charming human beings. I had this really big epiphany once where I was lighting a stand-in and I didn't like it and I was frustrated and I was like, man, we got to go though. So just call first team in, let's go. And it was Chase Crawford. He comes in and he sits down into the frame. And I was like, your shot looks great. And I was like, right, there you go. I was like, that's
pretty people are pretty,
Yeah. It was really funny. And it's true. I mean, Josh Duhamel in Bandits, like, totally. I can't do anything wrong with that guy. He's unbelievable. Literally Clark Kent, just like, right there. So yeah, no, totally. And I said that to Alan too. He's a nervous, he's like a little anxious, as he would say, this is not me saying this, but he would say he's a, what does he say? He's an anxious Jew or whatever. He's an anxious little ball. And I was like, dude, we're the underdog here with the Uncharted thing. I was like, people root for the underdog. You're giving them exactly what they want. So any of our little faults or compromises that we had to make, they just see him and he's doing his thing. They're ecstatic, you know, and I knew that we had that no matter what. So that was really cool. And yeah, it's true. I mean, you put those people in the frame and you're like, shot's great now, you know?
Yeah. What were some of the absolutely worth it. What were some of the things that kind of helped you, or maybe even some lessons that you learned on that abbreviated schedule that like really made sure that you got what you needed done? Like what kind of things did maybe you want to do but couldn't, or maybe some older tricks maybe that you leaned on from the indie days, as it were?
Yeah. Well, this is a good example. I mean, the most frustrating thing that happened on that was when they're in the big room, the main scene when he's in the chair. That drove me crazy because I had this whole Michael Bay shafts of light, real moody look that I set up and everything. And it was, you have to rely on haze for that to see the beams. And 2 weeks before, once I came on, can we use haze in this place? Can we use haze in this place? Yes. We get there right after we're done lighting. No, actually, you can't. You can't do it. Oh my God. Switch everything to like soft, more natural lighting, which is what's in it. Now we're behind. And which I hate. Wow. I do not like being behind, in that instance. And then the same guy comes up to me and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I was wrong. You can use haze. And what am I going to take another like hour or whatever to switch all that? I was like, we're shooting.
Right.
I'm going to see you in another lifetime in medieval time. Like I'm going to, like, you're done to me, but so that was a bummer, but you see it in the library when he goes in the library and I've got like a beam coming through. I was like, okay, at least I got that's what Uncharted should look like. But in terms of dealing with the truncated time, we had this whole, he jumps out the window and then he, it's the one that everybody talks about where we do the video game shot where he's on the ground and we come up behind and it's the third person shot and he shoots and we do the snap zooms and everything. That was the writer who came up with that. A few days before, we were freaking out because we were like, oh my God, we were thinking of it so much more traditionally, this setup. And we're like, we're going to have 2 hours to do something that people spend like days and days and days on. What the hell are we going to do, even with 2 cameras? And it was the main writer who was like, what if you guys did like kind of a video game shot? And then that's what then Alan and I just took. It was sort of a vague comment, but it was like we just took that. And then it was not only the follow, which we could use Steadicam on Nick Muller, who's a fantastic operator, did Stranger Things season 4. He's amazing. We did that, but then I can't remember who came up with it, but one of us came up with the idea of also doing, when you pull up, the camera moves inwards as well. And so then that was using the zoom lens as well. And Nick, the Steadicam operator, sort of offsetting around the shoulder. So that whole section we got done in a handful of takes, which saved a ton of time. Obviously more to like get it and that choreography, but sure. It felt so good when you got it. And that's arguably one of the money moments of that. Totally. We did with the widescreen bars go up and everything, that was really, and Nathan was doing all the little movements and everything. So that was sort of, I think, the highlight for everybody. Even when I love when he goes by and then the Jeep pulls up and we kind of do the zoom towards it, almost like it's like, now we're in cutscene time, like that's like how they do the camera, like kind of pull away from your third person body, and like coming up with stuff like that was really fun, but also extremely a lot of like the sun setting shit. We gotta go. And it was that hectic for sure.
Yeah, it's those kind of gigs like definitely have to make you feel more like what you imagined filmmaking was going to be like when you were younger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Versus, doing, in my case, like industrials.
Yeah, no, I trust me, I've done a million of those. I know exactly what you mean. It's I feel you on that.
Yeah. Is there this is a random question, but besides God of War and The Last of Us, can you think of a video game that's actually pretty cinematic in your mind?
That's a really good question because obviously Uncharted is like the like playing a movie. No, that doesn't really. I was gonna say I'm a massive Final Fantasy, specifically 7. That was like that.
Did you play
shook
the remake?
my world? Oh yeah,
The remake is excellent.
Yeah, I've played. I'm one of those. There's a lot of us, but I'm one of those. I've played Final Fantasy 7 too many times. But yeah, I mean, if you actually play it, it's not, especially the original. It's not. I wouldn't call it cinematic, but it has cinematic potential. And I love thinking of like a version of that. But yeah, no, that's a good point. I think the Call of Duty games certainly like attempt to do the like major like Michael Bay type thing, and they do kind of go down that road, and they can be quite cinematic. But yeah, I think you picked the right ones. The Last of Us, God of War. I mean, Naughty Dog really started it, right? Like that was kind of
I guess those are all.
Yeah,
no,
they
not
kind
God
of
War.
really
not
God of War, but I think the new God of War took from that. I played all the old God of Wars and all that, and they weren't nearly as much. But the new one with the sort of uncut camera and everything was definitely from the Naughty Dog school. And I think that they stepped in at some point. Maybe it was Last of Us 1, maybe it was a little bit before, and were like merged sort of those genres in a way, or mediums, I should say. And I don't think anybody else has done it as, the Batman Arkham games have had their moments,
I suppose.
But again, I think you're right in that it's Uncharted, God of War, and Last of Us are the three ones that like they're another level than everybody else.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sure you played Half-Life. Like that was the one that everyone went like, "Oh, that's a movie. Half-Life's a movie."
Yeah.
Now if you're going to play that again, you're like, "Not really."
No, yeah. I think anybody, a young person now playing Half-Life, like what?
Yeah.
But no, Half-Life 1 and 2 was that. Oh man, so good. Which I want to play Half-Life Alyx so bad.
I know I can't get a headset.
I just not going to spend that kind of money. So for me, if the PS5, the PSVR 2 does it, which I'm hopeful, will still be expensive, that I'll do. But I'm not buying a PC and a full headset. Like I'm not spending $2,000+, probably more, to play a video game. I can't.
You know what sucks is you're the only person on this podcast that I can say this to, and you'll understand. I played professional Counter-Strike 1.5 and 1.6.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, oh, I got to stop doing this so I can go to college and do a real job. And it's like, fuck, man. Like, that's the one game. Like, there's like 3 games in the world that have like $20 million prize pots, and like Counter-Strike's one of them. I wasn't that great, but
when we were growing up, I mean, that I don't think in a million years I would have ever thought esports and the amount of money and everything. That is a new, which like cool, like everyone, you do your thing, but it's wild how much that turned into. I'll never forget, we were at my wife had a short film premiere at, I think it was TwitchCon, and I had no idea I was like, I don't know what Twitch is. I don't know what any of this is. I felt it was like a moment. I was probably 30 or 28, 30. And I was like, oh, I'm getting old. Like not old,
right.
But I was like,
I'm not in touch anymore.
Well, because I would walk into these rooms, and it's funny, people will be listening to this laughing at me because they're like, yeah, this is what we do. But now I get it, and I think it's cool and everything like that. But I'd walk into a room, and there's this big old projector and a video game playing, and just a shitload of people just watching a video game. And I was like, what the fuck? And then we went into the stadium, and they had everybody out there playing, and it was like a big sports game, and there's teams and lights and everything going. And I was like, this is insane. I was like, what is this? And now it's so much more like big and normal. I think it was still, I won't say it wasn't underground at all, but it was sort of somewhat earlier than what it is. It's sort of ramped up more now. And I get it now. I mean, I played a bunch of Call of Duty Warzone during pandemic during like true
Sure.
lockdown, and I'll still even go check out some streamers that are just like, they're so good at what they do that it's like, how could you not enjoy watching someone just incredibly good at something, you know?
For me, it was when Valorant came out and everyone was like, oh, it's the exact mechanics of Counter-Strike just with a little extra. And I was like, okay. And I played the beta. And so now obviously there's so many people that are good at Valorant, but even my decrepit, 1998 style of playing, like I was smoking kids because they were all coming from like
That's
Call of Duty
awesome.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was a big ego
Yeah.
boost early pandemic.
Oh yeah. No,
But
no.
yeah.
Call of Duty hides. It's you're going to get smoked in that world for sure. You need some real skill.
Well, and to your point about like the big arenas and stuff, like I remember we used to meet at like a Radisson Inn, for like $200.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Anyway, back to filmmaking. I did want to ask two things. I don't know what order I'm going to do it until I guess we'll start. I was looking at your website, and you have 3 reels up, but they haven't been updated since 2019. And,
Yes, sir.
And that is not to say anything about you, but it's something that we've actually brought up a lot about on this podcast is reels are kind of, well, correct me if you think this is incorrect, but it seems like reels are kind of dead. Like no one really, it's like maybe someone will look at them.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. And I've had this conversation a bunch recently because, again, I'm sitting there going like, 2019, it's been a while. It's actually funny. I made that very clear on them recently because I hadn't rewatched them in a while, and I rewatched them and I was like, ugh. And
Right.
which I think everybody does to their own work in a way. But so it's interesting. So there's a lot of DPs I know who are peers of mine who are very, very talented and on their way to being quite successful and will be very successful. And a bunch of them do not have reels up and haven't had reels up for a while, kind of doing what everybody's doing now, the like selected work thing, kind of curated and all that. So my thinking is this, and I could be totally wrong. I have no idea. My thinking is, and I spoke to my agent about this recently, is I sort of sit there and go, it's up to the person who's coming and decide what they want to do. They can look at my Instagram. They can look at my selected work. They can go specifically and look at automotive. They can look at music video. They can look at commercial. They can find something specific that they want. They could be referenced to something specific. They could look at reels. They could look at my IMDb. I totally get the argument that someone would go, well, I want to control what only I want them to see.
Sure.
I actually would argue, I don't think I'm at that point yet where I can just be like, here's this stuff and only look at that, which I think sounds like a really privileged, nice place to be. But for me, I'm sort of looking at it as, because again, I spoke to my agent and a bunch of other people, and they were like, no, we still get requests for reels, which is interesting to me because I've had this conversation with people like you who are going like, oh, you don't have to do reels anymore.
Well, then that's just what I've heard. Like I still keep my reels updated once a year because I am not getting good jobs yet.
I'm terrible about it. I do it like every 2-3 years, and I'm gonna do it very, very shortly. It's also tough for me now because I'm doing a lot more features these days, and that's commercials, whatever. That's how I pay the bills, and I've been very lucky that commercials and music videos kind of like come to me, and I've kind of gotten into that rhythm now. Whereas I'm like hustling on the feature front. But I don't get that. I don't get the ability to release that stuff for 1.5 years, 2 years. I mean, I had one movie that took 4 years to come out. So updating that reel is very difficult. Totally. It takes a long time. I've had shorts that people like don't want to release still. Stuff like that is stuff that I'm really proud of. So that's a difficulty there. But anyway, I think the point is that there really is no answer. And it just depends on this difference between being like heavily curated. I only want you to see this, which I think artistically is the better way to go. But I see a lot of this stuff when it comes to filmmaking and art and craftsmanship and DPing specifically. I see so much of it as just like a major privilege that I'm just like, you're lucky that you're in this position or you're that position or whatever. For me, I'm less pretentious about the jobs that I do when I choose. I obviously like to pick things that I'm excited about or whatever, but like if we want to get really real, and this is really good for a lot of younger people, you got to make sure you're in a financial healthy place. I'm a freelancer, you know what I mean? And it's like, why would I turn down work. I mean, there's a lot of people in this business who are independently wealthy. I'm not like that. I don't own equipment. I'm not going to sort of take myself away from jobs. You know what I mean? Like, why would I do that? I've experienced highs and lows. I've experienced dry spells. You know what I mean? So I look at the website and everything else as like, kind of why not? Right. I don't know that it's hurting me, which again, someone else could disagree and say, no, man, cut your shit down to a third and make it really specifically this and just what you want to shoot. I think that sounds so great in theory, but that also sounds like, I don't know what world that person's living in, because it's not the one I'm living in, you know? And so, and again, I'm very, very lucky. I'm working on a Paramount movie right now. I just did another movie this summer that was awesome. I got another movie in January. I'm shooting feature films, making a living. Like, whew, life is good. I'm very, very, very lucky. But long-winded way of saying, like, they're just there, and people want to watch them, and they don't want to watch them, you know?
Yeah, because the way it was, and it's also good that you bring up like talking to your manager about that, because I think that's another thing that people who don't have teams with them, you know, management or agents or whatever, don't know what they're looking for. And so if your agent's like, well, reels are good, selected work's good, leave it all up there, then that's like good advice for anyone who's
she basically was just like,
fuck a reel.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, it's all, this stuff is all like, you have to decide for yourself and go with your gut. But her point simply was producers and directors request them. And I was like, good enough for me. Done. Yeah. You know, they can, I think it's insane that people would, on the flip side, we're deciding that DPs should be hired and they're great from still images from their work on Instagram on a terribly compressed thing that you're looking at this big on your phone, and it's a still image, and their job is motion and cutting and editing. Like, what? Well, and don't get me wrong, reels are also highly manipulated too, and only so helpful. I've said, my wife's the director, and she's like, you should watch the first 10 minutes of someone's, you know, film. You know, you could sure you should watch all of it or whatever, but like that'll tell you a hell of a lot more than any of this other stuff. And if you're actually thinking of hiring somebody, you should probably commit and put in that amount of time. So I don't know. I just try not to be too specific. And hey, man, if I was in the position where I never needed to update any of this stuff and I was just like doing my thing, then like that sounds great, you know. Like, but I think I'd be foolish to make that assumption, because I find in this industry that you gotta like just keep going and keep pushing forward has been, because I've taken my foot off to be like, let's see. And it was like, oh, nope, that was a mistake. Like you have to keep pushing. So, and whatever that may mean.
Well, and to your point about like being at that point where you don't have to update anything, I've interviewed 80 people now, you know, from, you know, Jeff Cronenweth all the way down to, you know, indie filmmakers and stuff like that. And I think maybe 3 of them didn't have a web, Jeff being one of them, like don't have websites. Or whatever.
His first feature was called Fight Club. It's one of the, it's a masterpiece. I don't use that word lightly too. I do not use that word lightly. That movie's a fucking master. I met him by the way at the after party.
Mark Romanet before that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. He's Cronenweth is brilliant. I was at the after party at the ASC Awards and just ended up in sort of just a huddle with people, whatever. And he was to the left of me, and someone was like, "Oh, Jeff, meet Alex," whatever. And he was like, "Hey, I'm Jeff." And I was a little drunk, and I was like, "I know who you are." I was like, "I know exactly who you are." I was like, "You're fucking you mean a lot to me. Like your work is." I mean, Fight Club again, 1999, like that movie. Woo. My cousin showed me that in high school. Good story about that one. VHS showed me Fight Club, and my mom stopped us and was like, "You're going home," and it was halfway through the movie. And I went to high school. It was on my older cousin. He's like basically my older brother. And I went to high school, went back to, or whatever. I think I was in 9th or 10th grade. And I was just telling my friends all day, I was like, I saw this insane movie. Like, it's incredible. And I didn't finish it or whatever. And little did I know when I watched it later that
it gets more insane.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I love that movie. And yeah, he's brilliant. But yeah, of course, no, he doesn't, you know, it's,
but
it's
my
cool
point
when you
being
see
is
those,
it's him who doesn't. So anyone who's listening, like,
Yeah.
unless you're there, go ahead and keep your website up. You know, people are going to want to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, it's again,
the guy who shot Game of Thrones, he has a
realities.
website. Greg Middleton, great guy. He's got a website.
Yeah. Very successful. And I'm sure he's still grinding,
Just shot Moon Knight.
There's so much content. Yeah. With Andrew Droz Palermo. I can never say his name right. He's a sweet guy. I met him a bit too. That's the nice thing about being in LA too, by the way. Side thing in terms of there is that it's cool. I've hung out with Steve Yedlin. We brought up him before. He's awesome. Like, they're just there and you interact with people, and it's really cool to have those conversations and just interact with people who are sometimes your peers and sometimes just at another level that you just are so excited to sort of interact with them. And it makes it all feel so much more real and human in a way too, because they kind of say things that you're like, that's how I feel. And that in and of itself is really, 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 really nice and healthy. And I think worth it if you're really committed to this.
Yeah, that was, so I live in LA. I live on the west side. And my first interview was actually with, my second interview was with Josh Richards. And so he, about halfway through it, he was like, you know what, like, this feels nice because I guess DPs don't really talk to each other. And I was like, I certainly don't know any. I know like 3, like in my friend circle, everyone else is like directors and stuff like that.
I talk to so many. I don't know what it is, but I'm really lucky in that I recommend.
He also lives in the UK, so in LA, you can go to the ASC Clubhouse or whatever, and like you're gonna find him, or Cinegear or whatever, NAB.
Yeah, I think also the rental houses too, and Instagram's helped a lot. But I have a lot of DP friends that are peers that Orange Software, Julius Swain, like people who, Mike Reyes and Dylan Schneider and, there's so many I'm not going to remember right now. But anyway, people listen.
It's not an award ceremony. It's fine.
Yeah, right. I got my list. But people probably listening going, John Chima is a really good friend of mine. Like people that are like, I follow them and stuff like that. And we all talk. We all interact and do lunch tests together and get coffee and beers and tell war stories and sort of just share stuff and ask each other questions. I love that camaraderie though, and that's sort of like
totally
rooting for one another, and then also going, I've never done this before, or I don't know what to do here, and sort of like sharing. And some people aren't. Some people are a little more like, they don't want to share. And there's a bunch of people that are so open, and I try to be as well. I try to be really supportive in that way, passing jobs on to each other, stuff like that. That is, I really value the DB community. I think is amazing. At least the one that I've interacted with, I think is really, really special.
Yeah. So, community is so important. But before I let you go, I did want to, because this was actually the second question after the reels was, I got to interview Katie Williams, and she's done a lot of car work, automotive work, and I didn't really get to dig too deep into it. And so I wanted to ask you, because I'm fascinated by it, because it seems like very formulaic, but incredibly difficult. So like I almost, when I was talking with her, I almost said easy, and I'm like, no, it's not easy. It's a thing. Yeah. I couldn't get the good words. I still cringe a little bit. I listened to that back. I was like, no, that makes it sound like she's phoning it in. What I meant was every car commercial kind of feels the same. So
it
there's
is
obviously,
yes.
And so I was wondering if you could talk to me about like, what is that formula? What goes into making a great car commercial? And what are maybe some of the challenges that people don't expect to see on something like that? Because there's always going to be car commercials. Yeah. Someone's going to shoot ones at some point,
Yeah, until they're fully animated. Which by the way, which that was not a thing. The thing is, advertising people always want to, get out to a different city and sort of, have dinner
3rd Street in downtown isn't what everyone wants every time.
Yeah, that's not that's what they're looking for. So yeah, look, it is and look, I think that there are a handful that I've seen that start to do some really special stuff. They are rare though. And look, the thing is so I love cars. My brother is a driver and he works for Porsche, and he's got the coolest job in the world, and he did some racing, and we grew up around. My dad did a little bit as well, and we're just car folks, and I go kart, like race people and all that shit, and so I'm a car guy. I love it, but it's an inanimate object, and it looks good from certain angles. It's a shape, and certain things, there are rules too. They get into, it's interesting, all the different, so the car companies, what they do when they get a car, they sort of, it gets finished is they basically shoot it on a big white sight, and they photograph, all the angles that they'll basically choose as like, these are the ideal angles. That the way that this car has been designed is, this area, this sort of large plastic area, or grill thing or whatever, we don't really like it, so we want you to be high, and that kind of makes the car sit like it's lower. We want you to sort of be a little bit more long lens here, or like avoid this or that or whatever.
Interesting.
It's not, and it depends on the manufacturer, but it can be very specific to somewhat vague. Like a brand like Porsche, you can think of as like, that brand is, we're talking about like advertising brilliance. Like they don't make a misstep, and they're like very, very, very rigid in that way. And it's all very controlled. So that starts to become, and they're just not going to use, if you're on an ARM car and you're doing your thing, and then you start getting really wide and close and low or something like that, and the car's getting all bulbous and whatever else, they're not going to use that shot. You know what I mean? Like they're going to cut around and go to the other stuff. So you are kind of, the formulaic aspect is often you're like checking things off the list, grill, badge, headlight, taillight, wheel, like you're getting all those pieces in that way. And then I think if you're working for someone who's a little more adventurous, that's when, you're seeing anamorphic get used, which obviously fits the shape of a car. I once shot something with a car that needed a 9x16. Let me tell you, not a good time.
We're going to shoot this on an 8mm. You got the full frame camera, right?
Yeah. No, we literally were off. We were on a track. It was like our car, picture car was on like almost one edge, and the ARM car with the arm all the way. It was, wide lens too. Fortunately, it was only a few assets that they needed. So it was sort of like, we just have to get a full profile in, and it was like, this is silly. But so, yeah, but I think you can do really interesting things with reflections, because it is a mirror surface. So you see all the fun stuff with all the tubes and volume stuff and all the lights chasing and, running up and down the car and all that stuff. That stuff's really fun. And volume in general is a great space for, it's a mirrored angled object with a, cylindrical light around it basically. So pretty perfect. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm rambling now just about cars.
Yeah.
What it is like, like you're saying, it can be formulaic, and then I think very rarely advertisers allow. That's the thing, is a lot of the time they want it to be safe. They say they want it to be one way, and then you get there and you're like, oh, right, got it. No one wants to get fired. I get it. But that's
oh my God, the amount of times I've done industrials where they're like, we want it to look edgy and cool. Like I did an apartment complex that never got released, so I can say this. And he was like, I want it to be like following these artistic people as they go through their day. So we wrote this whole script about like how they, they live here, then they go to their studio, and they're like, there's all the amenities and stuff that they go through. And then we send him the edit, and he's like, but you can't see the apartment complex. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's in the shot. And he's like, no, we want drone shots. So what it ended up becoming was just straight up just drone shots of place. It became a real estate video. And then he was like, well, why isn't this cool? Yeah. And the PR company was like, which one do you want, bud? Like,
can have both. 1,000%. And that is the reality of you can work with people who, they want to be cool. They want to, oh man, I want to do this thing, and I want to be, it's a really important thing you need to take into consideration. Any element of filmmaking is written word and spoken word are these interpreted, theoretical, like what the hell does people say things to me where you're like, well, the other day a director said, go up. And it was like, tilt up, boom up, raise everything in the frame up. Like there's so many interpretations. Like, well, hold on. Well, what do you want? You know, like, and so, but that's more specific. But on what you're talking about, I think, you know, I've got a lot of family members in advertising, so I understand the psychology. And they want to do the exciting thing, but fear and job security is a very real thing. 100%. So the cool commercials that we see, which again, I totally get. I appreciate that. But, you know, the really special commercials that you see, I think they're very rare, and they're rare for a reason, is because they take a group of people, a big group of people too, by the way, is a lot of cooks that are willing to take a risk and go for it. And that's really, really, really cool. And that's just why it's kind of a lot of the time pretty straightforward, is because it's the, you know, whatever, a tour is a little problematic of a term, but in anything, it's, you've got, you know, a guy painting a painting and he's just the individual doing the thing, to a film, which, yes, has a hierarchical, as it should, in my opinion. That's why I like narrative better. I like the hierarchical thing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a director. I like following this person who I believe in and just making their work better. Totally. And then when you shift into commercial, it dilutes naturally because there's so many other people involved. That's just natural too. It's not even just hating on it. It's just the reality is, as you go from an individual to 15, it's going to get watered down. So anytime I see commercials, especially car commercials that are special, I'm always like, God damn, like that's cool that happened. Someone with a high paying job risked it, and I respect the hell out of that.
Totally. You know, I know it's about midnight and a half where you are, so I'm going to let you go. But all
good, man.
And also my camera's about to die. But I'd love to have you. I got to get a better battery for that thing. But I'd love to have you back on and keep chat, because I feel like there's a few things that we could talk about in the future. Maybe after you're done shooting this, we can talk about that.
Yeah. I'm always happy to. This is I've really enjoyed this conversation. So yeah.
Awesome, man. I like the beginning. I'm changing the outro for this for next season, but the truncated version is, and this happened 2 episodes ago, someone hit me with this on accident. I used to be like, oh, what's the best piece of advice you got? And I always hated that, because it's like, that's such a basic ass question. That's bad journalism. And then the guy goes, well, I'll tell you the worst piece of advice that I got. And I went, that's my question. So the question to you is, what is the worst piece of advice you got?
The worst, you know, that's a really good question. And I'll tell you what, the first thing that popped into my brain. I don't know if it's the worst piece of advice I've ever gotten, because I've not thought about it.
It doesn't have to be the worst. Yeah, just like...
Sure. You know. Well, it wasn't even advice. It was just something someone said that I remember it piercing through me and being like, I strongly disagree. Is right out of film school, you know, I'm still DPing anything I can, but also just, you know, trying not to move back to my parents and just taking anything and everything to pay the bills and stay in my New York apartment. And I went and second AC'd on a shoot, which, by the way, Red One, watched a guy put a CF card in backwards and just jam up all the teeth. I looked through the flashlight and they were all, because I DP'd a movie on it my thesis year, the first like student to do it, at least in that world. And I just watched this guy. I was like, oh no, fuck the whole camera up. But anyway, that DP, I don't think he's doing it anymore. But something came up. It might have been to do with editing. I can't remember exactly what it was. But he kind of snapped at someone and he's like, I'm just here to make it look pretty and I don't care about anything else. And I remember sitting there and being like, I couldn't disagree, like not at all. Like, you are there to help tell the story, make it make sense. I'm constantly being asked about logistics and how to make people's lives easier and whatever, and it's like, fuck that, man. Like, no way, that is not the thing. Like, go do something else, you know. I just disagree with that. That is just about making just the visual. It's so much more than that. Play psychiatrist to the director sometimes, you know, like it's a lot of things. So that wasn't advice, but it was something I was standing right next to him when he said it, and it was clear as day. I was like, I don't want to be that guy.
100%.
And yeah.
Well, and that's, I think that's also like the young way to think about it, right? Especially if you come from like photography and you see pretty pictures. It's like you want your photo to be pretty until you get like a book of Magnum photos and they're not really pretty, but they're really, interesting. And you're like, oh no, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, there's a difference. I know I've worked with a lot of photographers and they can be really brilliant, but there's definitely that world is very different than the film world in terms of how they approach things. And, yeah, they're sort of the master in a way that can be a little problematic.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, like I said, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And
thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Have you back.
Awesome, man. Definitely. Yeah, count me in. Cool. Thank you. You have a good night.
Take care, brother. You too.
Bye.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F@R Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.